Blue ball of light is called bald, lightning, and it appeared behind there. Home, just moments after. Something else. The brief appearance left witnesses uncertain about what they had seen. In a remote Middle Eastern lake, the jagged stone walls of an ancient fortress have begun. What if the river that shaped civilizations is now revealing something no one expected? As waters recede near Raqqa, an ancient fortress rises from the bed of the Euphrates, a river tied to prophecy for centuries. But inside the exposed ruins, investigators report sealed doorways, iron chains embedded in stone, and deep claw-like gouges along the walls. Then came the sightings. Massive winged, human-shaped figures moving silently above the site at dusk. Revelation speaks of 4 angels bound at the Euphrates. Is this drought revealing forgotten architecture or something once restrained? Stay with us. What comes next may challenge what you think is happening. Tell me below. Natural cycle or something more? Fishermen near Raqqa noticed the difference before officials did. Wooden boats that once floated freely, now scraped against exposed sediment. Mud flats widened, the current slowed and then rising from the shrinking waters of the Euphrates. Stone appeared, not scattered rubble, not random debris. Walls. Massive, thick, defensive. Walls stretched across the exposed riverbed, their foundations locked into the earth as if they had been waiting for centuries to breathe again. An ancient riverside fortress, long submerged beneath reservoir levels, stood revealed under open sunlight. Its outline was unmistakable: fortified corners, elevated platforms, and carefully arranged masonry designed for protection and control. For decades, and this structure had slept beneath the surface. Now history lay uncovered. Preliminary assessments from regional researchers suggest the remains could date back to the Abbasid era, possibly between the 8th and 13th centuries. Fortresses like this once guarded strategic crossings along the river, protecting trade routes and asserting authority over movement and supply. Its placement near Raqqa was strategic. Control the river and you controlled survival. But what drew heightened attention were the details found inside. In one interior chamber, investigators recorded deep gouge marks carved into the stone walls, long uneven scratches, clustered near a reinforced doorway. Along that same threshold, faint lines of writing appeared beneath layers of hardened plaster, as though the entrance had once been deliberately sealed. Iron rings were embedded in the masonry. Corroded chain fragments lay fused to the floor. Historians caution that medieval fortresses often contained detention rooms. Prisoners were shackled. Doors were sealed. Scratch marks can be the result of tools, erosion, or desperate human hands. Every element fits within known historical patterns. And yet the narrative shifted when eyewitness accounts emerged from the evenings following the discovery. Several individuals claimed that above the exposed fortress, enormous winged figures were seen moving across the sky. At dusk, not birds, not drones, they described silhouettes shaped like human forms, broad-shouldered, elongated wing, extending outward, gliding slowly against the fading light. The figures appeared larger than any known raptor, their outlines distinctly humanoid. No verified footage confirms these claims. Optical distortion at sunset can exaggerate scale. Dust, particles, heat waves rising from exposed stone, and perspective illusions can transform distant aircraft or ordinary wildlife into shapes the mind interprets differently. Human perception, especially in heightened emotional contexts, fills gaps with powerful imagery, but the symbolism struck deeply. Ancient traditions speak of fallen angels, beings cast down, restrained, bound in darkness. Certain interpretations of prophetic texts describe spiritual entities, confined until appointed times. The imagery of chains embedded in stone, sealed chambers reopening as a prophetic river dries, and reports of towering winged forms overhead created a convergence of symbols difficult for some to dismiss. In theological literature, fallen angels are often portrayed not merely as rebellious beings, but as forces associated with deception, power, and judgment. Their release in symbolic readings represents upheaval, spiritual conflict manifesting through earthly events. Yet most scholars emphasize metaphor over literal spectacle. Apocalyptic imagery is layered, poetic, and intended to convey moral and spiritual truths rather than physical sightings. Still, timing intensifies perception. Water levels have declined dramatically in recent years due to drought, upstream dam management, and climate patterns. Engineers can explain the physics. Archaeologists can explain the fortress. Psychologists can explain visual misinterpretation. But when a river long associated with prophecy withdraws when sealed rooms, and chains emerge from beneath it, and when reports of winged humanoid forms spread across the same horizon, imagination and theology intertwine. Are these sightings misidentified, natural phenomena magnified by expectation, or do they reflect how ancient narratives resurface when geography shifts? No credible evidence supports the literal release of supernatural beings, and yet symbols carry weight. As the Euphrates continues to recede, it does more than expose stone. It exposes memory, ancient texts, long-held beliefs, and the enduring human tendency to interpret dramatic change through the lens of the unseen. The river is changing, and when landscapes transform, so do the stories people tell about what rises from beneath them. As the fortress stood, exposed along the shrinking banks, the sky above the Euphrates told another story. Witnesses along the river described something that did not behave. Like ordinary lightning, there was no thunderclap splitting the air, no jagged bolt tearing downward from cloud to ground. Instead, a sphere of light appeared, round, contained, almost deliberate. It hovered several feet above the water's surface, glowing from within, like molten glass suspended in midair. It drifted slowly. The light pulsed, faintly shifting between pale orange and electric white, and some said it reflected off the remaining pools left by the drought, rippling across the surface like liquid fire. Then, without explosion or sound, it vanished. No smoke, no scorch marks, just darkness, returning to the riverbank. Scientists have long documented rare accounts of what is known as ball lightning. Physicists theorize it may be plasma, formed from ionized air during intense electrical storms. Others suggest chemical reactions involving silicon in soil could generate brief, self-contained luminous spheres. In controlled conditions, small plasma effects have been produced in laboratories, but true free-floating ball lightning remains elusive, unpredictable, and extremely rare. It does not appear on command, it does not follow consistent rules, and it almost never lingers long enough to be carefully studied. Skeptics argue that unusual atmospheric conditions combined with dust, humidity, and electrical imbalance could explain what was seen. The Euphrates region has experienced intense heat, unstable weather patterns, and fluctuating pressure systems during the drought. Plasma events, while uncommon, are not impossible. Yet this was not just any location. Revelation 16:12 speaks of the Euphrates drying up in the final sequence of events. For centuries, that verse remained abstract, symbolic to some, literal to others. Now the river's waterline recedes visibly. Ancient caves emerge from beneath exposed cliffs. Fortress walls stand uncovered, and then, above that very river, a drifting sphere of light appears. Coincidence, atmospheric physics, or something that forces deeper reflection? History shows that unusual natural phenomena often accompany periods of upheaval, solar flares, strange auroras, unexplained lights. Science seeks patterns and mechanisms. Faith seeks meaning and message. The two are not always in conflict, but they do ask different questions. It could simply be plasma interacting with a charged environment, but when water withdraws from a river written into prophetic scripture, when buried, structures rise from beneath its surface, and when light manifests silently above its current, interpretation becomes unavoidable. The real question is not whether physics can describe it. The real question is whether we are paying attention. If this account made you think like the video, share your view in the comments and subscribe to stay with us, because what we uncover next may go even deeper. The reports did not begin with light. They began with movement along a quiet stretch of the Euphrates after sunset. Residents described the surface shifting unnaturally. The air was still. No wind pressed against the water. Yet waves rolled outward from a central point, heavy and deliberate, as though something immense displaced the current from below. At first, observers assumed debris had broken loose upstream. A collapsed tree, a submerged structure giving way. But those who remained watching insist the disturbance moved against the flow, slow, controlled, and powerful. Some claimed they saw a shape beneath the surface, not clearly defined, not fully visible, just a darker mass gliding under the dim reflection of moonlight. When it shifted, the water bulged upward before settling again. The sound, they said, was not a splash, but a deep, muffled surge, like weight pressing against liquid resistance. There is no verified biological evidence of a newly discovered large aquatic species inhabiting this region. Marine surveys of the Euphrates have documented fish populations' sediment patterns and environmental stress from drought. Nothing in official ecological record supports the existence of a giant, unknown creature. Hydrologists suggest that when water levels drop dramatically, submerged terrain changes. Sandbars shift. Pockets collapse. Air trapped in underwater cavities can escape in bursts, creating sudden swells. In low-light shadows distort scale and depth perception. The human eye fills gaps with imagination. And yet the description echoes something ancient. In Job 40, a creature called Behemoth is portrayed as immense and unshakable, a being of extraordinary strength, which I made along with you, feeding on grass, yet possessing bones like bronze and limbs like iron. Scholars debate whether the passage refers to a hippopotamus, an elephant, or a symbolic embodiment of untamed power in creation. The text emphasizes mass stability and overwhelming presence. When witnesses along a drying, prophetic river speak of something vast moving beneath exposed waters, language from that ancient chapter resurfaces almost instinctively, not because there is proof of resurrection, but because symbolism waits beneath memory. As drought reveals fortress walls and hidden caves along the Euphrates, the imagination is stirred by what once lay concealed. When water retreats, it does not only uncover stone, it uncovers narrative. Old words regain new context. Ancient metaphors regain relevance. The mind seeks patterns in the unfamiliar. Could it be shifting sediment and optical distortion? Very likely. Low visibility and environmental stress create illusions more convincing than daylight logic allows. Science demands measurable evidence, and none has been presented to confirm an undiscovered leviathan in the river. Still, the psychological weight of the moment remains. A river associated with ancient boundaries and apocalyptic language begins to shrink. Structures long submerged emerge. Strange lights are reported overhead. And now beneath the surface, something appears to move with unnatural force. Whether it is geology, perception, or something deeper, one truth stands clear. When hidden depths are exposed, even the oldest symbols rise with them. And once they rise, they are difficult to ignore. When night falls along the exposed banks of the Euphrates, the darkness no longer feels complete. In several shallow pools left behind by the receding river, witnesses have described a faint bluish glow spreading across the surface. There are no nearby streetlights, no passing boats, no reflections from distant towns. The light does not beam outward. It lingers close to the water, soft and pulsing, as if the river itself is breathing illumination into the night. Those who approach say the glow intensifies when the surface is disturbed. A tossed pebble, a stick dragged through the shallows. Ripples shimmer briefly with electric blue before fading back into shadow. It is subtle, but unmistakable. Scientists point to a known phenomenon, bioluminescent algae. Certain microorganisms emit light through chemical reactions inside their cells, but often triggered by movement or agitation. These microscopic organisms are more commonly associated with coastal waters. Yet under the right environmental conditions, changes in salinity, increased temperatures, and stagnant pools caused by drought, they can appear in inland systems. The Euphrates has changed dramatically in recent years. Reduced flow alters oxygen levels. Evaporation concentrates minerals. Slower currents create pockets of still water where microorganisms can multiply. From a biological perspective, the explanation is plausible. Light, in this case, would not be supernatural, but chemical, a reaction of living cells responding to stress and motion. And yet this is not merely any body of water. In Genesis, the Euphrates marks the boundary of the Promised Land, a line drawn into sacred narrative. In Revelation 16:12, it is named again, this time, as the river that dries up during the unfolding of end-time events. Across centuries, its presence in Scripture has given it a symbolic weight beyond geography. Now, as drought exposes its bed and fragments its current into isolated pools, light appears on what remains. For many believers, the imagery is difficult to ignore. In Exodus 13:21, light guides a people through wilderness fire in the night before deliverance. In John 15, light shines in darkness, signaling revelation before transformation. Biblically, illumination often precedes manifestation. It comes before movement, before judgment, before change. So, when a prophetic river grows dim in volume, yet bright in patches of blue flame like shimmer interpretation stretches beyond microbiology, is this simply algae responding to environmental imbalance? Or does the image resonate because light emerging from darkness has always signified something more? Science can measure the organisms, test the water chemistry, and trace the cellular reactions responsible for the glow. Faith reads patterns differently, asking not only how something happens, but why it happens. Now, a drying river associated with prophecy begins to emit faint blue radiance in the night. Ancient boundaries are exposed. Symbols once confined to Scripture feel geographically tangible. Perhaps it is biology adapting to drought. But when light rises from the last remaining waters of a river, long tied to sacred narrative, the deeper question lingers. What in this moment is being brought into the light? As the Euphrates narrows year after year, the riverbed tells a different story than it once did. Where strong currents once concealed layers of sediment, exposed stretches of earth now shimmer faintly under the sun. In local conversations and online forums, reports have circulated about traces of gold appearing along the drying banks. Small deposits caught in silt. Flecks revealed where water once flowed freely. The river recedes, and what was buried begins to surface. From a geological standpoint, this is not extraordinary. Rivers naturally carry mineral sediments downstream, including gold particles eroded from distant rock formations. When water levels drop heavier, materials settle and become visible. Drought accelerates that exposure. What appears sudden may simply be accumulation meeting opportunity. Yet the Euphrates carries more than sediment in its narrative. In Islamic hadith, there is a well-known tradition that the Euphrates will one day uncover a mountain of gold, and that people will fight over it, leading to great bloodshed. The warning in that account is not merely about discovery, but about human reaction. It speaks of conflict sparked not by scarcity but by abundance revealed. In Revelation 16:12, the river is again described as drying up in the final sequence of events. The The shared imagery, water, withdrawing something significant emerging, resonates across traditions. Gold in Scripture is never just metal. In Exodus 32, when Moses delayed on the mountain, the people melted their gold to form a calf, transforming wealth into an idol. What was meant as resource became rebellion. In Matthew 6:21, the principle is made direct. Where treasure is stored, the heart follows. Wealth reveals allegiance. Revelation 17 and 18 describe Babylon adorned in luxury. Gold, precious stones, wealth flowing through its system only to collapse suddenly. In that vision, gold represents both prosperity and vulnerability. It symbolizes economic power, influence, and temptation intertwined. So when reports of gold surface alongside the drying of a river associated with prophecy interpretation, shifts from geology to morality. It could simply be mineral deposits exposed by environmental change. There is no confirmed mountain rising from the riverbed, only scattered findings amplified by rumor and expectation. Drought uncovers resources. Humans notice. But the deeper question is not how much gold lies beneath the sediment. It is what people will do if it appears. History shows that wealth can stabilize societies or fracture them. It can fund rebuilding or ignite conflict. When something valuable emerges during a time already marked by scarcity and tension, priorities become visible. If the Euphrates is shrinking, as many ancient texts describe, and if valuable resources begin to surface as it does, the issue is not measurement. It is choice. Will hearts turn toward accumulation control and competition, or toward something beyond material gain? If this reflection stirred you like the video, share your thoughts below, subscribe to stay with us, and thank you for being part of this journey.